This lesson is for PSD 301. Our focus skill is a level 2 question. It's our focus in isolation, and it's to calculate the average of a list of numbers. Now, this is also something that we've seen before. This is a review, but we're just going to continue to work on this skill. Now, our level 3 focus in context, this is going to be in context with a lot of word problems, but we're going to calculate the list of an average of numbers, but also use some additional skills. We might be adding or subtracting in there as well. Okay, so let's begin. We've got a problem here, a level 2 focus and isolation question that says for the first 7 days of January, the daily temperatures for International Falls, Minnesota were -4 degrees Fahrenheit, -6, -2, 0, 2, 4, and -1. Then it asks what's the average high temperature in degrees Fahrenheit for those 7 days. So these numbers are all of the high temperatures in Minnesota, in that particular city. So I'm going to take all of these numbers and I'm going to add them up and divide by 7. Okay, so just to review this with your calculator, make sure that when you are typing this in, oh, sorry about that, I don't know why it dragged over there and made it so big. Here we go. So we're going to type all this in and we're going to hit enter before we hit the divide by 7 key. So we're going to add all of this up. And after I get this total, I'm going to divide by 7, and I get -1. So this is the average high temperature for those 7 days. That is cold. No thanks. All right, now, our focus and context question here has us looking at some table for our information. So it says, in order to qualify downstate for the state championship meet, the runners on Mount Prospect High School girls track team have to average a time of 25 seconds in the 200-meter run. The following table shows their times. So Tina, Cora, Frankie, and Lizzie's times are given here, and it asks us to find the average time. So we're going to take each runner's time, and since there are a total of 4 runners, we're going to divide this number by 4. So again, it's pretty similar to what we just worked on. I'm going to let you guys pause and calculate that real quick. So please pause and then keep playing so that you can see if your solution is correct. I just want to make sure that you can put that into your calculator correctly. Okay, and we end up with an average time of 24.95. Now the second question here is kind of how we're adding an additional skill. It says, with that time, will they qualify for the state championship? Now, what you're going to do is have to look and see if they're under 25 seconds, which in fact they are. So yes, they do qualify. Sometimes we might ask you a question like, how much do they qualify by? And in this case, you would subtract 25 minus 24.95 to get 0.05 seconds. So 5/100ths of a second. All right, now our extension skill, our level 4 extension skill here is to calculate the average of list numbers. Oops, that should say, sorry about that. Calculate the average list of numbers when you know the average and you have to find an additional number. Now this question here, it says, assume that in the previous question, each track team has 5 runners. If Lacey has yet to run, what time does she need to have in order to make sure the team qualifies for the state championship? Now, I'm actually going to come back to this question because I want to do an easier problem before we get to this word problem, but I just wanted to show you what that extension could look like based off of other problems. Now, this is the same type of skill, but it's a little bit more straightforward. It just says, given that the average of 6 numbers is 23, find the missing number if 5 of the numbers appear below. So here are 5 numbers only. So I'm missing the 6th number, but I do know that the average is 23. So I'm going to set this up as an equation. If I were to average the number I'm looking for plus all of the other numbers, so I write them out in a list here as the total sum, I would take this number and I would divide it by 6 to end up with my average of 23. So this is how I'm going to solve this equation. This is eventually an equation that I'm going to try to solve. Now, what I want to do first is get rid of this 6. So you want to get rid of the denominator first. To do that, just like we practiced before, we're going to multiply by 6 on both sides. Now that 6 in the denominator will cancel out, And on the other side, I have 23 times 6. So I would stick that in my calculator, and that total over here is 138 now. Now on the other side, I'm going to add all of the like terms that I can combine here. 19 plus 21 plus 10 plus 30 plus 14 is going to give me 94. So I know I have a lot of space here, but these numbers here all added up to 94. So now I'm left with x plus 94 here equals 138. And now this should be an equation that you're very familiar with solving for. You're just going to subtract now the 94 on both sides. Therefore, your missing number is 44. So that's how we calculate the average, or I'm sorry, when we know the average, that's how we calculate a missing value. Okay? So let's go back to this question where it says, assume that in the previous question, each track team has 5 runners. Now they only gave us data for these 4 runners here. Okay? So basically they're saying if Lacey has yet to run, so she's our missing time, we don't know what her time is, what time will she need to ensure that they have they can qualify for the state championship? Well, what we're going to do is take everybody, including Lacey's time. So X is going to represent Lacey's time. So we're going to add everybody's time together, and we're going to divide by the number of times total, which is going to be 5. So we take that number, we divide by 5, and we set that equal to what our average needs to be, which is 25. Okay? It was the 25 seconds that they needed to qualify. Now, just like in the last question, remember, we want to get rid of the denominator. That's the first thing we want to do here. So we're going to multiply by 5 on both sides of this equation. So we're ending up with 125 on the right-hand side. And then I'm going to go ahead and add all of the like terms here. So I'm left with x plus 99.8. And now I'm going to subtract that 99.8 to the other side to get x alone. That leaves me with 25.2, which means that Lacey needs to run at least 25.2 seconds or under. Okay? I would like you guys now to try problem 5 here on your own. So I'd like you to pause the video, try this problem, make sure you can do this extension skill because it's pretty tricky. There's a couple steps in it, and I want you to then play it back to make sure that you got the correct answer. So please pause and practice so that you get that essential practice to see if you actually know the skill. Okay, so to find the average of these numbers here, I'm sorry, I keep saying to find the average, but to find the missing number, because that's what we're trying to find, is the missing number here. When we're given the average that is 13, we're going to set up an equation where we have our unknown x added to all of the other numbers that are in this list, and we're going to divide it by the total number of numbers that we have, which is supposed to be 7, right? There are 7 total numbers. And we already know that the average is supposed to equal 13. So we're kind of working backwards here. We're going to start with that first step, which is to get rid of the denominator. Okay, so I'm going to multiply, and I hope you guys did this too when you practice it on your own. I'm going to multiply by 7 on both sides. So that'll cancel, and that will leave me with 91 on the other side. And then I'm going to go ahead and add all of the like terms here. So I'm left with an equation, x plus 93. And then I'm going to go ahead and try to isolate x. Remember, we're taking the opposite of this addition sign, so we're going to subtract 93 on both sides. And we end up with a negative 2. It's okay to have a negative number here. Even if all of these numbers here are positive, we could still have a negative number because our average is only supposed to be 13. And a lot of these numbers are much higher than 13. That's why we need to account for, and one of them in this case has to be negative to lower that average a little bit back to 13. Okay, that's the end of the tutorial. Please go ahead and get started on skill sheets 1 and 2 and then finish up with the critical thinking packet. Nice job.